probably the key metric that Sport Scotland use to measure our performance and health as a governing body. And a lot of those kind of measurements they use then dictate how much funding we receive from Sport Scotland, how likely we are to receive 4 years worth of funding instead of just 1 year's worth of funding. And so it's really, really critical that not only are we making sure that everybody who's playing lacrosse in Scotland is a member of Lacrosse Scotland, it's also really important that we keep on trying to grow that category now. Unfortunately, as you saw at the AGM, our numbers have been going backwards for a few years now, and especially sort of within the university sector, we seem to be not as effective at essentially getting students to join Lacrosse Scotland. So I just want you to have a bit of a think about this whilst we go through the rest of the webinar, and then we'll come back into this at the end and have a bit of a proper chat about it. But what we want to know is kind of you guys who are club reps or club admins, what would make your guys' lives easier to make sure that your membership have joined Lacrosse Scotland? What's worked well about having the new system in place? What could have been better? One of the things that we are looking at actually removing in the future and sort of for next season will be the My Club Will Pay option. So it would just be an individual joins and individual pays. So really interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Would that be a positive thing for your club? Would that be a negative thing? Just kind of keen to hear your thoughts. And I think before we jump into the main meat of it, we are aware that Azolve hasn't been perfect, and it has been a bit clunky and a bit difficult at times. But I guess whilst we are still using it, what would be the best things that we can provide to you as clubs and as individual members to try and help sort of just smooth that passage and smooth that kind of facility a little bit? Because as I say, it's really important that we get on top of our membership and make sure that our membership situation and make sure that everybody playing is joined, and we want to make that as easy as possible so it's all seamless and painless. But just have a think about that, and we'll come back to it at the end. So first things first on the leagues for 2020, 2021. So when I say league rules here, obviously I don't mean playing rules. The rules for the games are obviously different. But what we are going to do, which we haven't done for a few years now, is essentially just run the same set of rules across the men's and women's side for things like administration, for cancellations, for kit, all that sort of kind of admin side of things like reporting results. What that allows us to do is just have one set of rules that's nice and simple, easily maintained across both sides of our organisation, and allows us a bit of transparency and consistency as well. So things like if you cancel with less than 24 hours notice, or if you field an ineligible player, sort of what is that, is that a penalty of a point, 2 points, whatever it might be, just making sure that that's consistent across the two. So the existing rules that we're going to work off are on the website. We did have slightly different versions for men's and women's last year. There's no major changes planned to those ones on the website. There's nothing that we're trying to sneak through or hide. It's just to let you know that if you do have a look through those rules, and obviously we'll circulate the new rules before the season starts for feedback and comment. But if you do want to go and have a quick look at the rules we're currently playing to, they're there on the Lacrosse Scotland website under sort of competition and then leagues, and you can sort of feed in any thoughts or feedback, comments you might have. So on the women's side, and this will be the first bit where in a minute I'll open it up to sort of some kind of active discussion and feedback. But first things first, is a big thanks to Liz Lawson and the Women's Fixtures Committee, who have been working away in the background to pull together a proposal for next season for the women's side of things. And I think one of the bits of feedback we got was that we are having quite a lot of cancelled games, and sometimes as well the standard, if you've got a team that are quite well established versus a new university team, it can be sometimes the standards in the game are quite mixed in terms of the team. So where we've got to is that the 5 teams that have confirmed their interest for next season are sort of Edinburgh Cattle, Edinburgh Thistle, Glasgow City, Edinburgh University, Glasgow University. Those 5 teams will participate in a league where they'll get sort of the regular fixtures part of that. And then for the other teams, for some of the university sides and some of the sort of newer sides, they can then schedule sort of further non-league fixtures, if you like, as they desire throughout the season. The idea being is that it puts less pressure on some of the university sides who struggle sometimes to travel due to transport issues. It hopefully also kind of reduces some of the competition mismatch that you might have in terms of teams travelling 3 or 4 hours to get beat quite heavily. And also, hopefully, the main thing will reduce the number of cancelled matches. So hopefully this will go well. But I mean, first things first, I'd be really keen to open this up to anybody from the women's side of things who's got thoughts on that. What would be, would that be welcomed, or do you think it's a step in the right direction, step in the wrong direction? Really just open up the floor, I guess. Don't all jump at once. All right. If we're all happy, come back to that at the end then.
Sorry, it's Liv.
Go for it, Liv.
I wasn't sure whether to type or just chat.
Yeah, sorry.
So have the clubs that didn't respond been approached just to confirm that they definitely don't want to be in the league? I'm just thinking maybe with the students being away or like handing over committees, there might actually be clubs that aren't mentioned there that might be keen.
Yeah, so I know Liz has reached out to all the clubs that played in the league this season, and she's not heard back from anyone except those five. So I don't know how much chasing has been done, and kind of, and you're probably right. There may well be a couple of clubs that might have been lost in handovers and stuff. But at the moment, they're the five that have said, yeah, we're sort of keen to press on and be a part of the league next season.
Okay, cool. It seems like a step in a backwards direction almost to reduce. Like I think we had 9 and then we had 8 and now down to 5. There's just not going to be a lot of kind of competitive opportunities at the same level, I suppose. But I think I don't know who's on the call, but our cancelled matches were Aberdeen and RGU. Understandably, they're a bit further north, and I kind of get that it might be more difficult for them to get teams down the road when it's, such a long journey. So I know the guys do a league format where you go to somewhere kind of halfway and then you, sorry, and then you play a cluster of matches. Would that be possible at all? And do you think that would help to bring the likes of Dundee, St Andrews, Aberdeen, and RGU back on board?
I mean, so I'm gonna first of all, I'm gonna hold my hands up. I'm not as close to the women's sort of side of things than I am to the men's. So apologies for that. But I suppose what we have, at least on the men's side, found that has worked really well is having 3 teams show up to one venue means that you kind of solve some of the problems you have with things like umpires. You solve the problem if one team does have to cancel for any reason, you still get some sort of cross played. So I'm sure if you spoke to Liz, I'm sure it'd actually something that, if that would bring 2 or 3 extra teams into the league, it's definitely something we'd want to consider. I think the big thing with this is it's really not about making the league smaller. It's about which teams are really committed to playing the league at this stage. I mean, Lorna, I don't know if you've got any thoughts. I know you might be a little bit closer than I am, but I definitely think the triangular approach has been something that we've had a lot of success with. And from a personal point of view, I'd certainly recommend that being looked into.
Yeah, the women voted it down big time. Maybe 3 years ago. It's maybe worth looking at again. They really didn't want that format. I think we mentioned it when we went out to the clubs this year, offering alternatives. They had, if my memory serves me right, 2 or 3 options, and I think that might have been one of them. And the request from the teams was that the new teams felt overawed by the competition and weren't enjoying it so much, and so they would rather play with people of the same standard, so they can develop at their own pace. And the top teams wanted to have really competitive games, so they wanted to keep the league small and play each other many times, so they get really full-on games. So that's where we are just now. Nothing's set in stone. We want as many people to play as possible, but that's kind of the background to where we got to so far.
I think the key point there is that, yeah, nothing's set in stone, and we're really keen to get thoughts, feedback, comments. And that's part of what these webinars are about, is trying to just have a more, I guess, regular dialogue, so we're sort of communicating more. But I don't know, Liv, if that helps answer a little bit the question, or if there's any other clubs, anyone else that's got any sort of thoughts, feedback.
Yeah, just from kind of Thistle's point of view, obviously because we have such a kind of range of ages and kind of abilities as well, it did work well for us in the sense that kind of playing the Aberdeen and RGU, who kind of have slightly less experienced players, it was fine. But we also did find that our more experienced people didn't really like playing them, because it was just, it was a bit, we felt a bit guilty just kind of going out, and they had travelled so far and then we were just kind of pummeling them, and it wasn't really fair. But on that other side, it was quite good for us to kind of get our juniors out onto the pitch. But I don't know whether, obviously, triangle would work a bit better, and we could just kind of completely field kind of junior players.
Yeah, I suppose it would always be that balance between getting, as many competitive games played as possible and avoiding cancellations and sort of, those games that we've all been a part of in the world of lacrosse, where it's not quite as fun when one team does show up and, gets beat 20-0 or whatever it is. So as I say, nothing's set in stone on this one, and I think Liz and Lorna and the rest of sort of everyone involved in the fixture side of things, it'd be really great to get some more of that feedback and kind of. I think the other thing I'll say is we're always looking for more volunteers. We're always looking for more bodies to help. So if anybody is keen and interested on the women's side, who wants to go and help Liz and the women's fixtures committee, then please just reach out. The more collaborative and two-way we can make this process, hopefully, the more successful it'll be for everyone. So jumping on to the men's side, we've got 5 teams confirmed for next season. So it's all the same teams that are in this season. So that's Borders, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Stirling, plus RGU and Aberdeen Uni have merged to form the new Silver City Lacrosse Club. So good for you guys. Welcome aboard. It's great to have another sort of a new club, I suppose, in the world of Scotland. So that 5 teams, we're going to stick with that triangular format that we did this year. The one thing we are going to avoid is those game days where we have kind of all the teams congregating in one place. It was a really good idea for sort of a bit of community and to make sure we got games played. But I think the very valid feedback was that actually we end up traveling quite a long way for 15, 20-minute sort of fixtures. And it's quite difficult to slot those all into a day, and it becomes a bit hectic and you feel like the lacrosse quality isn't quite there. So what we're going to aim for is sort of around 6 to 8 league game weekends. Now, we did have those fixture dates locked in, but obviously COVID has sort of changed that. We're not quite sure when we'll be able to get up and running, but we are still going to try and get those 6 to 8 game weekends played over the course of the season, plus the end of the season cup. And then as per usual, we'll have the box and field development weekends occurring throughout the season. Now, again, we went out for feedback and what we were going to move to this summer was sort of fewer field and slightly more box, because obviously it's going to be a box Euros year, but now the field Euros are next summer, and there's the new head coach in Matt Bagley who's just come on board. Obviously, we'll need to have a quick look at, a bit of a look, at when are we going to have field sessions, how they will fit in the box sessions to make sure that we're leaving enough weekends for the league, but also giving both the field program, which has its Euros in the summer of next year, plus the box program, which is starting its cycle for the Euros in 2022, enough time as well. So bear with us on dates. As I said on the women's side, we're crying out for people to kind of help organise this stuff. I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted in lacrosse that it is often a few sort of broad shoulders that pick up a lot of the slack. So if you do have anybody within your clubs or any of yourselves that are kind of keen to get involved and help sort of run the fixtures committee on the men's side again, please do get in touch. It's the same thing. I'm quite happy to open up the floor to any thoughts on fixtures from the men's side of things, any feedback from this season that we can take on board for next. Kind of give you a couple of minutes to open up the floor, I guess.
Hi, Mike. Dan.
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. Hi, everybody. Just a couple of things on it. If there's 5 teams, obviously we're going to have a mismatch on triangular. So are we going to try and stagger weekends, or are we going to try and have one big game instead? That's one point. And 2, from our point of view, I know geographically it's really difficult because you've got Silver City at one end of Scotland and you've got us just south of Scotland. But could we, if we'd agree with people, try and avoid too many games in the Dundee sort of area, because 3.5 hours travelling was probably borderline too much for our lads to do. That's why we couldn't make the cut, because we couldn't do it 2 weekends in a row. I couldn't build people up to travel 7 hours. So it was a shame because it detracted a little bit from the cup for us. But just an aside on that, if we could try and Edinburgh's okay, it's kind of halfway, but.
Yeah, I think on the first point, just around, so what we'll either do, it's obviously the RGU Aberdeen Silver City merger is quite a recent thing. So there's 2 ways we can tackle it. Either we can stagger it, so that sort of one team has almost a bye weekend. Now, kind of rather avoid that because, we want every team to have as many games as possible. But, each team will then just roll through having a bye. Or, as you say, what we can do is have 3 teams in one location and the other 2 teams play a full length game at their own location. So there's 2 ways we can look at it, and what we'll do is we'll go out for feedback for the clubs and sort of get people's preferences, and obviously in terms of what impact that will have on the game time each team will get, and in terms of travel and all that sort of stuff. On the second point, yeah, absolutely. I mean Jamie did a great job last year of trying to juggle a lot of cancellations and sort of people pulling, teams pulling out of the league, and we were trying to do things a bit differently with this triangular format just to get the league back on its feet and actually have a league be played. But but appreciate that, yeah, Dundee is not an ideal location for sort of yourselves, and I guess probably even Glasgow, it's a bit further we'd like. So what we'd probably look at doing is, for instance, when you guys are due to play Silver City, we'll have that with Stirling, in sort of in the Stirling area, and use that as a triangular, so that you're travelling sort of 2 hours, Aberdeen are travelling 2 hours, and it's it's not as sort of as difficult, I guess. Cool. So this is the bit that I'm quite excited to talk about, I guess, and the bit where we're really after some really comprehensive feedback, both tonight and over the coming weeks when we sort of push this out for a bit of a consultation period. But obviously, one of the things we do lack at sort of a structural level in Scotland is grassroots lacrosse, and players across the country picking it up in primary schools and secondary schools, across the board. If we really want to secure the kind of next generation of players and give our organisation a really stable and strong future in terms of both membership numbers, in terms of funding, in terms of physical players, in terms of U19 and national team pathways, we really need to start branching out and trying to get junior lacrosse off the ground across the board. So I'm going to walk you through a really brief overview of some proposals that we've put together. And what I'm going to do is then publish them in kind of all their detail, with all the sort of the caveats and the full aims and budgets and stuff. We'll publish those on the website and go out for a bit of a consultation for you guys to sort of take them back to your clubs and have a bit of a chat and thoughts. And hopefully what we'll then do is develop those. And sorry, that shouldn't say September 21. That should say September 2020, as in this September. We're not going to wait another year to do anything. So some of you might be familiar with the old LDO program that used to exist in English lacrosse. Now, LDO is a lacrosse development officer, and what England lacrosse used to do is hook up with guys from the States who would get brought over, and women, actually, it was on both the men's and women's side, who would be brought over to the UK. They'd be based within a region attached to a local club, and their job, in exchange of sort of food and board with one of the club members, and sort of they did have a bit of a salary, their job would just be full-time, grow lacrosse, go and reach out to schools, try and build a junior program at the club they were attached to, and obviously they used to play for the clubs they were there. Now, the tier 2, the visa changes that came in a few years ago put a stop to that LDO program, and from a funding point of view, we wouldn't necessarily have the funds as Lacrosse Scotland to be paying a full-time LDO anyway. So what we wanted to try and do, though, is take, I guess, a bit of inspiration from this idea of having one person in a region who is dedicated to that region, and trying to grow sort of lacrosse there. So the way it would work is, obviously there'd be a board member that each LDO would sort of report into, and they'd work with the board member and the safeguarding committee and the Lacrosse Scotland child protection officers to make sure things like PVGs were all taken care of, to make sure we were addressing all the safeguarding concerns and putting in place all the safeguarding measures we would need to before we rolled anything out. The idea is that LDO would essentially have a bit of autonomy then as to how they want to try and develop lacrosse in that region. So, we'd probably, the ideal situation is we'd have an LDO for Edinburgh, for Glasgow, for Aberdeen, for Dundee, for Stirling, for the Borders. Basically everywhere where we already have an established setup of senior lacrosse and a density of lacrosse players, we'd love to get a regional LDO into that place. Now, what we'd also love is then for that committee in that region to start growing. So eventually the regional LDO would have somebody who is responsible for a junior lacrosse club and somebody who's responsible for coordinating schools. In first instance, that person may end up being, the same individual, but the more people we can get and the more hands on deck we can have in each of these sort of small local committees, hopefully the better chance we're going to have of giving kids an actual sustainable pathway into doing taste sessions in primary schools and actually having a club to go and play at. Now, a key link up for all of this would be active schools. So myself and Ian are actually hoping to set up a meeting with a lady called Jude Salmon, who is the head of active schools in Edinburgh. And so she is the person who oversees all of the active schools staff in the Edinburgh area. And if we could agree some sort of program with her, that would be a great introduction for active schools reps to start going and carrying out lacrosse activity in schools. So if we were to facilitate those relationships across the board, if we can prove it's something worthwhile and something successful, hopefully that would give us a great inroad to a lot of different schools and a lot of different programs, and ultimately put sticks into the hand of a lot of different kids. So a few aims kind of that sit behind that. Now, as I said on the first slide, we are going to pilot this in a couple of locations. We just don't have the resource to try and roll this out everywhere just now. But what we'd love to do in the next 4 years, and this is part of our strategic plan that we've given to Sport Scotland, is establish some sort of a junior lacrosse club. Now, be that part of an existing club, so it could be Glasgow City Junior Lacrosse Club, and they're attached to the Glasgow City men's and women's teams, or it could be even a separate feeder club. So you might have the Edinburgh Junior Lacrosse Club, and then Edinburgh Thistle and Edinburgh Capital and Edinburgh City all support that junior club, and it's just dependent on what is more suitable for juniors as and where they go. And that's not to say that we don't want clubs who are doing their own junior stuff. Like I know that Thistle are a great example of a club that has already got a bit of a junior program going. Edinburgh City have got a couple of kids coming down to our trainings, but what we really want to try and do is give it a bit more structure and a bit more support essentially from us. Now, if we do that successfully, hopefully we're going to increase the number of kids playing lacrosse in Scotland. We're also going to tackle that kind of age-old problem that we've had where we're going into primary schools, going into secondary schools and doing taster sessions. We're running the after-school clubs, but the problem is there's not then a pathway for those kids to carry on playing at a club level, having enjoyed it either at an after-school club or perhaps at a taster session. Now, if we can do this, we also grow our membership numbers because we'll have new junior members and hopefully we'll be able to then get new school members signed up, which helps us in our kind of strategic goals of growing the sport, but also in terms of securing our funding through Sport Scotland, because we're showing that our membership can start growing instead of reducing. Now, the challenge is that Lacrosse Scotland as an organisation, it's a board of volunteers. All of us pretty much have full-time jobs and other things going on in our lives, so time can sometimes be limited. So what we really want to do here is put together a central infrastructure that will help support each local region deliver their own success, depending on what that looks like. Now, it's not for me to say, as someone who lives in Edinburgh, what will work best in Aberdeen, but actually, it might be that the people at Aberdeen Uni and RGU and Silver City Lacrosse may have a much better idea of which schools, and which sort of approach are going to work best for them. Now, that's obviously not forgetting about the existing schools that play lacrosse in Scotland. And one of the big things that we want to do is really try and strengthen the links between Lacrosse Scotland and those schools, and sort of put more support in place for those schools to deliver their lacrosse programs and their lacrosse curriculums. Now, I think one of the things that we really need to work at is that collaboration piece. If we can get that right, that will really help. So, for instance, if we, as Lacrosse Scotland, if we had an advanced site of all the fixtures and all the events that are coming up over the school calendar, it would make it a lot easier for us to organise support for those things. And if we know when schools need umpiring requests, or if they need requests for kit or just admin and support. And the thinking is that really the best way to achieve this would probably be with a dedicated schools representative, essentially. So somebody who'd be willing to be the liaison point between any school that is already playing lacrosse and any school that wants to play lacrosse in the future, and the Lacrosse Scotland organisation. So if you would be interested in that sort of a role, or that sort of something that you'd fancy, then again, please let us know. The consistent theme tonight that we are calling for all hands on deck, and volunteers will never be shown the door. So if you're interested in helping kind of any way, just please let us know. So as I said, if you are interested, there's a contact us section on the Lacrosse Scotland website, and this is the really early stages of trying to grow grassroots lacrosse in Scotland, I guess structurally. And the anecdotal story that kind of always blows my mind is some of the guys who have played for the Scotland national team, because they were at Mearns Castle High School in Glasgow. That's one school that got a lacrosse program off the ground because they had a teacher there who was a lacrosse player. And I think 4 of the alumni of that program went on to represent Scotland at senior level. So it just shows that what we can really do is give all of these kids something to aspire to. It's something new, it's something different. But obviously we need hands on deck to kind of deliver that. That's pretty much it in terms of formal content. Now, I mean, what I'd be really keen to do is open up to the floor again, and just hear your thoughts, especially on that junior stuff, or any other questions that we want to cover off. And Lorna, I don't know if there's anything that's popped up in the chat, but that's pretty much the floor over to you guys, really.
Yeah,
who's on? Stan again. You hear me okay, Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, far away. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. On that junior thing, I've got two things I'd like to discuss on that. One is, you'll know, but we're in a bit of a strange position because we're technically south of the border, but we kind of work. We've been talking anyway, because I need your help with the safeguarding side north, because it has to come through Lacrosse Scotland. but we currently have an LDO comes up via a strange system in England where actually clubs can have a professional. And having spoken to people who organise that actually would apply to Scotland as well, because there is only one league in Scotland and it's an elite league. So actually, it cheats the whole visa regulations. But we can talk about that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, feel free to share that.
So we also have a sizable grant application as a club at the moment for coaching, where we're looking to put a coach into schools 2 to 3 times a week in Cumbria and Dumfries and Galloway, and that's not trying to step on your toes. It's just what we've been forging ahead on that.
I mean, I'm not precious about you guys. I mean, the more you can do now, the better. And that goes for all the existing junior stuff that's going on. It's just about trying to bring it together and tackle it collectively, I guess. Yeah.
So what we do need from everyone in Scotland is we need your juniors. We want to create at least this in the early part of 21, it being allowed. We want to create a 6-a-side league to get some of our juniors who are training. We have 15, 20 plus juniors training now, but they're not getting competition. So, and I know that there's fragments of juniors elsewhere who aren't playing, in Edinburgh, for instance. And so we're looking for anyone who's got anything like that to get their juniors to try and put something together. So not every week, obviously, but like even once a month, have a little mini tournament to get these kids playing. Because what we discovered is that if they're not playing, then keeping their attention is really hard. But it'd be great if we could bring everyone together. And what I'm saying is we've got that program underway. So if everyone wants to jump on the back of that, at least for a year or so, while it gets established, then we'd really appreciate it as well.
And is that across boys and girls, or is that?
Yeah, we are. So we put a massive emphasis last year and this year on putting female coaching the females in the schools, particularly in the state schools, with a view to really expanding that game. Now we've had some success last year, but we've reached about 50 to 100 females last year who've played for the first time. But we were on a flyer, and then COVID-19 put a stop to it. But our plan is to pick that back up, and we've already got some things in place to do that when it comes back. But again, without anyone to play down here, and that we have no one to play, keeping the females interested is really hard. And I know it's a really strong female game in Scotland. So if we need your help really to expand that. They're not going to be the greatest team in the world or teams in the world for the first couple of years, but they do need some games.
Well, I mean, I think that's definitely where that sort of, regardless of which way the Women's League proposal goes from here, I think there's definitely an opportunity to try and get some friendlies scheduled with the sort of other development sides, you might describe it, some of the newer university sides. And obviously, you'd have to tackle things like, Aberdeen versus Borders for sort of a development friendly may not be the perfect solution. But yeah, let's have a chat about that. I'd be interested about trying to do some sort of a junior tournament perhaps as well once the season's back up and running. If we could organise that maybe the back end of the season, and we could bring try and collate all the junior stuff that's going on across the board and have it in one location, that'd be great as well. Any more for any more?
Yeah.
Hi there. Sorry.
No, you go. I'm just wanting to talk about membership, so you go. That's more important to hear from you.
No problem. It's Kirsty White. Hi. I think all this stuff about the juniors is fantastic. It definitely needs to happen. And I suppose the plan there is great, but I don't want to say ambitious, but obviously we still don't really know what the year ahead is going to look like, and it requires quite a lot of manpower behind it. And so I'm just wondering what you maybe see as the priority. So if we do want to do something and do it really well, then what would be the priority? What would good look like by the end of, say, like next season or whatever in this junior space? Like, what should we be aiming for as like a benchmark, or is that something just to be worked through?
No, that's a great question. So actually, I had a really good chat with Ian about this, because I remember when I sort of started putting all this together, sort of 7 or 8 months ago. You're right, ambitious is the word that kept on coming into my head, and I was like, Christ, this is going to be tough to deliver this across the board. So kind of what myself and Ian had talked about is getting some grant funding. So he's got a lot of experience with doing that with Cricket Scotland and Scottish curling as well, which is great. And then really focusing on kind of 1 to 2 locations and really getting off the ground. So actually investing funds to pay coaches, to give them an incentive to do it, to purchase equipment for schools to have. To really try and link in with someone like Active Schools. So if in 12 months' time, if we were in 4 to 5 schools in the Edinburgh area, that would be success for me. I mean, and then, you know, obviously we'd look to grow from there and sort of take whatever success we can deliver in one, maybe two locations. Another one that feels like an open door to push against is actually in Dundee with the Dundee Ducks roller hockey program. So they've got toddler hockey all the way through to, I think they're under 16s with the Great British Championships and the ball hockey championships last year, and that's girls and boys as well. So they're really keen for us to get in there. So we probably pick one or two locations where we know we've got a density of resource in terms of people, and we can focus a lot of effort, and we really just try and get it off the ground in those kind of locations, and then start to roll it out to other places at the same time. Oh, sorry, once we've established that success. That kind of makes rough sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it's, I think it's that difficult bit as well, is obviously with Edinburgh, that's probably got the most densely populated place of more people playing lacrosse at that junior level anyway. But I suppose it's the difficulty. And so I'm from Glasgow City, and it is quite tricky over here because very, very few schools, as you know, do play it. So I think there's all kinds of conversations that need to happen around that. But that sounds good in terms of getting it really embedded in a good 4 or 5 schools and then kind of taking it from there. So thanks for that one.
No, and as I say, like, absolutely, if sorry, I'm not throwing your hostel pass here. I mean, like, here you go, Kirsty, away you go, and set up junior lacrosse.
Not at all.
But let's say if, you know, there was a few of you guys through in Glasgow who sort of said, actually, let's go and target that school, Lacrosse Scotland. How can you support us? Great, give us that problem. You know, it's going to be impossible for us to coordinate 7 locations straight off the bat when we've never really done anything this kind of this structurally ambitious before. But, you know, absolutely don't want to be turning people away who are keen to do stuff. It's more just around making sure that our efforts, in terms of sort of myself and Ian, are focused enough in one place to make it successful before we spread our efforts too thin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, we are hoping to, we train at Jordan Hill School pitches now, and we're hoping to get back there next year. And I think they definitely would be a school that might be interested as a starter for 10. So awesome. I'll kind of keep you posted on that one. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, and as I say, like, if you need help with grant applications, or if, you know, you're trying to get funding for kit, all that sort of stuff, Ian, and I generally am not under sort of selling this when I say he seems to be an expert on. He's quite literally written an article on applying for grant funding. So all that sort of stuff, yeah, reach out and we're more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Cool. There's no more. Laura, I think you were going to have a quick...
Sorry, Mikey, I got a question, buddy.
Yeah, fire away.
Apologies on that. So this is Dylan Kalman speaking. Obviously, I don't really represent the field program in any way, shape, or form. Touching upon your previous statements there, Mikey, towards the end, surrounding funding and surrounding, obviously, getting the juniors involved, there's a large discrepancy in terms of, you know, what equipment you would need at a 14, 15-year-old level, you know, clearly versus a senior level on the men's side, certainly, and what I would only assume would be applicable to the female side as well. I understand that obviously you and Ian are in the process of applying for grants, and that's absolutely awesome. Is there, and apologies if this question is too, you know, far in advance, but at what point in time do we start reinvesting back into the senior program versus the risk of reinvesting into a junior program and surrounding, obviously, the equipment, the insurance, the travel, the pitches? I guess that's my question there.
So, wait, just so I'm clear, so you're asking basically if we got $5,000 worth of grant funding, how much of that would come into juniors and how much would go to like senior development weekends? Is that sort of the broad question? Yeah,
correct. I mean, what would be the split, obviously, between, you know, women's field, men's field, and men's box? Because obviously, I understand there's no equivalent to the female team in that just now.
So yeah, I mean, in theory, the senior programs should pay for themselves essentially, right? So the player monies that come in should fund things like pitch hire and, you know, equipment is provided by the players. All that sort of stuff. If we were to get a $5,000 grant, for instance, for growing junior lacrosse, $5,000 would be earmarked for growing junior lacrosse, be that equipment, coaches, travel, floor hire, field hire. So I guess it's easiest to think of all the monies that Lacrosse Scotland uses are sort of in buckets. It's not like one pot that everything goes into and then everyone can just draw from. It's kind of, all right, here's £5,000 of development money that we've been given from, you know, whoever, Sports Scotland. Okay. That money is for development, and that's development for juniors, it's development for you know, new programs, that sort of stuff. So it's not for booking fields or booking the floor for kind of the national teams to train, if that makes sense. No, if we had a big corporate sponsor come in, if Mason's doing his sort of sponsorship drive, and we got a big corporate sponsor give us a bunch of cash, it could be a lovely situation for us to find ourselves in. Then obviously we would then budget that money out into saying, right, that much is to support this, that much to support this, that much to support this. So it's
okay.
I guess you don't need to be worried about.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess my question more along the lines of this: the financial onus then falls on Lacrosse Scotland. It doesn't necessarily fall on Newton Mearns, for example, to say, okay, you need 10 sticks and 2 sets of goalie equipment. That falls on Lacrosse Scotland, correct?
Well, if we can provide it, great. If we get into it, if we find a school that is really keen to start their own program, then obviously we'd be starting to say, okay, well, we don't have a bottomless pit of money.
Yeah.
From it. So if you guys can provide your own equipment, I mean, that's probably a bit further down the line. We'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. But at least to begin with, we're going to need to be providing these schools with equipment, particularly ones who have never seen or heard of lacrosse before, sort of thing. So.
Right on.
Yeah, and there's equipment grants that we can apply for. So it's not necessarily a case of the schools have to fork out or every startup club has to fork out. There's more and more grants available for equipment that we can jump on that bandwagon.
Perfect.
Cool. All right, Lorna, over to you.
No, I'm just going to say the M word again. That Mike's, and it's not M for Mike. It's M for membership that Mike's probably sick of hearing about. He alluded to it at the beginning. Without members, we don't have money. Without money, we don't have lacrosse. So we have to up the numbers. And I also want to find out what you found horrible about membership, what you don't know about membership, because we're still trying to get to the bottom of some of the queries that we've got, and this isn't a criticism. This is just giving you some facts of the difficulties we're having, and I am pretty sure that you guys had difficulties as well. So if you can help share some of these difficulties, we can try and get them ironed out for next season so they're not repeated. And I think, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, that you're not getting enough information in time from Lacrosse Scotland to enable you to do what we then chase you for. So I'm prepared to put the hands up and say, yeah, we take some responsibility. But I'd really be interested to hear from you guys as how we can get membership, one, working better in terms of processes, and two, to see what you would like from your membership.
I've got Brendan Cook here. Just one a thank you, I guess. There was some confusion, obviously, in September there, just regarding memberships, and I know that's been updated. That we now know membership runs September to September, so I think that's great. I think a question kind of alludes to what you were saying with struggling to get university players as members. I guess the question that I'm sure they're wondering is, why would we be members if they're playing in the Bucks League and not necessarily playing in a field league? Do they need to be members? Is there an opportunity for us to just kind of blanket charge universities for their membership? And then I think, just by judging, individuals that I'm asking to pay their membership fees, where do the membership fees go? I understand that we have costs with Azolve and we have development. We've got to keep the lights on, but what does keeping the lights on mean? Is this going into a pot for junior membership? I think just some transparency around that might help, and allow members to know what their 35-40 pounds is going towards.
Okay, it goes towards basically the running of the organisation. Our running costs are in the region of £26,000 to £30,000. And of that, we've got £13,000, I think it is this year. Don't quote me on that one because I haven't got the numbers right in front of me. And then we get a bit from Sports Scotland. So that's our income for the whole year. And it goes on, I should have put up, I've got a budget on this. So we've got Azolve, we've got the insurance, we've got running of Sports Scotland office. There's a whole load of other things like running website, I mean, and our costs, I mean, Caroline and I have literally been like Shylock. We just won't spend, and that's as little as we can spend. We're looking at all sorts of things. So the membership is really tightly controlled. We also have to keep stuff in reserve because we lost money as an organisation 2 years on the trot. So we're now trying to make sure we're stable, which we are now, as you heard at the AGM. So it's none of it is really, and this is a frustration from the board, and I think also from the members, that we're not really seeing money coming back into the sport, but we can't plough money back into the sport if we can't get sufficient membership fees.
Yeah.
So we're nearly in a catch-22 on this, which is kind of frustrating. And the bucks is a real problem. And it's, again, no criticism of the unis. This is just where we are at the moment. It's just a fact. And I think Scottish Student Sports told me they had something like 550 lacrosse players, and I should have brought the stats with me. But, you know, they've got about 3.5 times the number that we actually have. So their membership is a lot bigger than our membership, and we're the national governing body. So there's something not working, and I'm just needing a little bit of help from the members to see what we can do, because as Mike's alluded to, if we don't get our numbers up, we'll miss our target and we won't get Sport Scotland funding, and then we won't actually have money to run the organisation. So I'm just looking for help.
Can I chip in from a school's point of view on this
Yes.
for a second? So I think there was a bit of confusion with communication, maybe in September, with like email addresses for schools and stuff. So we pay an English lacrosse membership at the beginning of the year because we go down to nationals, which is fine. And I think not this year, but last year we got an email from Lacrosse Scotland about paying our membership, and for some reason that just didn't come through this year. And I'm not sure. I spoke to Glen Almond, and I think they had similar issues. So I don't know what went wrong there, because we.
Yeah, well, we expect you to be telepathic, and clearly you're not. Yeah, and this is one of the things we're looking at, because we know that the membership starts on the 1st of September. So we just expect people to pay their membership when it's due. However, the missing part of the jigsaw is the members don't know when to pay the membership. So I put my hand up to this from Lacrosse Scotland's point of view. We're looking at writing a membership process, not making it sound grandiose, but it then means that everybody knows what's expected when. I think the schools might need invoice. So I think we might have to do a different process for schools. Is that correct? We would need to invoice you guys.
Yeah, because we have to pay it through our accounts department, especially us. But yeah.
Okay. So, you know, all this is kind of really helpful information. You know, some of the clubs didn't know they had to pay a club fee. So again, that's probably something that we need to, as a board, take on board process-wise. But somehow we have to get people wanting to join. Like tonight, this should really be a members-only meeting. I'm not going to go chasing people for membership on the call tonight, but there'll be some people sitting on this call that have not paid their Lacrosse Scotland membership, and there'll be people coming to the sessions that have not paid. And so, to a question from me to the people that have paid, where do you see the board stepping in and saying, you need to join? Because if we didn't make it open to everybody, then some of our clubs that we want, or schools or whoever that we want to communicate, will miss that communication. So it's like shooting ourselves in the foot. So we're in a conundrum that, what would you like us to do? We might not do it, but we're interested in hearing.
Hi Lorna, it's Liv.
Hi.
So our club's quite large, however, some people join and they might come to only a couple of club sessions that year, and they might never participate in the games. And there's quite varying levels of commitment. So my question has kind of always been, at what point in someone's lacrosse journey do they have to pay Lacrosse Scotland membership? Because that's quite unclear. My understanding is that it's when they participate in a tournament or a game. But is it really when they join one of our clubs and take part in our training sessions?
Yeah, I mean, it really should be on joining a club, and I can only liken this to other sports. That, when I joined a football club and a hockey club, it was kind of part of my membership. you know, I paid and I joined the governing body as well. But you know, whether we can do that or not, I don't know. But you know, I'm just looking for suggestions, because obviously we have to we're set for this year, but we have to think about like next year and how we run membership, because we really honestly can't afford to not meet the Sports Scotland target. So do you think it would be cruel to say on joining a club you need to join the national governing body? And then what do we do with all the Bucks players, because that's the majority of our missing income?
So when I was on the committee at Edinburgh Uni, I'm not there anymore, but we used to automatically, say you paid £100 to join the club, like your Scotland membership was included in that straight away. So no one had the option to, like when you signed up to be part of the club, you had to sign up to Lacrosse Scotland as well. I don't know how they linked it into their website, but there was no option not to become that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know the men did this when Keith Robertson was in charge of the men's programme and stuff. He just added, at one point he added the membership fee, because people like kind of argued why should they join. So it just became part of the overall membership of that sort of club or squad.
Hi.
Is there somebody here from a Bucks only? Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I'm currently on the Edinburgh Uni committee. And I think for us, what we did last year was we would pay Lacrosse Scotland membership fees when someone played in a Lacrosse Scotland match or tournament or anything like that. Because the difficulty for us is that there are some people who might not play anything connected to Lacrosse Scotland and not play very much lacrosse even with the uni, and we'd have to increase fees by quite a bit to pay for the membership for every single player.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a cost thing of, if we were to increase membership fees by, I don't know, like £30 for each person, then we would probably end up with a lot fewer members.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't get our membership up, we won't have a sport. So we really have to come up with something quite sensible here to get the numbers up. You know, the people that are playing in Bucks and not playing in the leagues, are there any thoughts on that? Bearing in mind they are playing lacrosse.
Hi Lorna, it's Laura from Capital here. So I know I'm not part of like a Bucks club or anything, but I was just wondering there, just at the top of my head, and it might have been done already before, but is it almost like a different type of membership, such as like what Liv was saying before about you know, when do we pay for like when players are playing a game? But is it almost like a standard joining fee, and then would there always be like a different type? So when you play a game, you then have a different type of membership or something. So then the people who play for Bucks, or maybe don't play in the Lacrosse Scotland League, they would, I don't know if this is too much of a faff, but they would then have like one amount to pay, whereas everyone else who's playing for the league would then have a different amount to pay. I don't know.
I kind of agree with, I really do agree with that one. It could almost be like a separate tiering of membership levels, I suppose, because I think the difficult thing is as well is that if we are asking people for money, but they're not, in quotation marks, not getting anything back for other than just what they were getting before, unless there was kind of, I don't know, like tournaments put on as part of that or something that they were paying for. But I think maybe having that two-tier system of like a small additional fee for people who are just playing Bucks, but then people who are playing in our Saturday and Sunday matches have like an extra X amount to pay, and kind of make it that different tiered system.
Because I mean, it's one thing we do at the moment. We have the sort of obviously adult, student, and there's also like a supporter membership. So I suppose, if I'm hearing the feedback rightly, what it could be is that supporter membership is almost a kind of affiliation membership, if you like. So it might be a tenner, you know, something like that. Nothing that's going to break the bank. So I think the supporter membership is a £5 at the moment from memory. And I guess that then joins you up to Lacrosse Scotland. You're part of the national governing body because you play lacrosse in Scotland. If you do want to participate in the Lacrosse Scotland events, leagues, tournaments, anything like that, then you need to be a full senior member / full student member, I guess. That sort of sounds like what the suggestion is, I think.
Yeah, it was just really just sort of like an idea, but I do think it's quite hard, obviously, like what Lorna was saying, to try and get as many people as we can. Like think of like tournaments, because you don't exactly then want to show up to a tournament and then on the day actually like loads of people haven't paid, and so can they like not play? So I understand how difficult it is. But I do, and I'm also wondering as well, what do like other national like governing bodies do in terms of like hockey, for example, in comparison to like what do they do for their clubs compared to their Bucks teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I only know as a hockey player, I just paid to join SHU straight away. There wasn't a debate. I didn't know whether I was going to be in the first team, the 10th team, or not in any team at all. But when I joined that club, the minute I could join the club and go to 2 trainings, and once I'd done 2 trainings, I was then to commit or not. And at that 3rd training, then I joined the club and the SHU. And I may never have got a game for that club, and that was just a risk I had to take.
And from memory, I'd want to double check this before I sort of bet on it, but from memory, playing lacrosse in England at university down at Exeter, we had to join the lacrosse club at the uni, but also had to join English lacrosse in order to play in the Bucks leagues, I think, from memory.
Yeah. Yeah, they've changed it now, Mike. They just need to affiliate their club, and this is what we are waiting for, the green light from Bucks, because at the moment we don't even have to make our Scottish clubs affiliate to us. That is due to change this season, that anyone playing from Scotland in Bucks needs to be a member. The club needs to be a member of Lacrosse Scotland. They haven't reached as far as individual members. I think England, you're right, used to do individual members, but it's changed, because that would have been a big help. So anyway, I don't want to hijack your meeting, Mike. There's a question from Dan about schools funding. Can you see the chat, Mike? There's just the last one. I didn't want to lose that one. He's got a league rule question.
I'm just.
Actually, quick. I've got a couple of questions, actually, Mike.
I'm sure.
On membership, actually, there's a couple of things from our point of view, because we have a bit of a fresh view at it, because we came in blind this year, not knowing how it worked. One is for Lacrosse England. You'll know this, Mike, because you played on there. Is they make a much bigger deal of the insurance issue as well. Being covered to play, and the personal insurance issues, and whether or not it's a legitimate reason for membership, it's a good selling point, and it's something to look at, and it's a big deal now in terms of sports, especially lacrosse, where injuries do happen and can happen. So that's that. And the second thing is, I think we felt for membership, but we still struggled, and probably still do struggle a little bit, to understand how you can get to the end of the season and still have players playing who basically aren't members. It's just, and I know it's an issue that's been addressed and going forward, I'm sure it won't happen, but I think it's that lack of checks and measures which is your real issue. There's no incentive whatsoever to be a member if you then find that you don't need to be to play the game. And that was our biggest surprise, because we were quite diligent about it, because having come from the other system, we thought we'd be checked and every one of our players had to be a member. And the only other issue that is we recruit all year long, and the only issue, if you could look at, is we sometimes recruit players in February, March, and we're still having them play full membership with just only half a year of the season left, maybe one game to play. And it's just whether or not that's fair in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, so that's totally fair. I think, so interestingly, that's one of the reasons why we're going to be making sure that we're all off the same rules sheet, so it's really, really clear. So that'll be, all the clubs will be aware. If they field anybody who's not a member, that's, I think, from memory, it'll be a point lost, I think. But as I say, we're going to consult on the rules anyway. But yeah, the challenge was, it was something, new membership system, trying to get the league back up and running, trying to embrace some new clubs that were getting back involved, whilst also kind of that policing process pretty much just falling to me and Jamie, which wasn't really sustainable across, all the clubs and all the members. So I think that's totally fair feedback. I hope it's something that we'll get on top of this year. And I also
stick on it. It's just, but actually, a club should do a lot of responsibility should actually fall on all as clubs.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Because I was just going to say that. Yeah, and team sheets. You know, we will take responsibility as a board for some of the stuff that went wrong last year, but there was an awful lot that the clubs could have helped out with by being like Dan and being diligent and putting in team sheets and all these things. So yes, the board will take put the hand up, absolutely. But we really need the clubs to step up to the mark as well and meet us halfway. So Dan, if you can share your genes, well, maybe not, that's probably not the right thing to say in a meeting, but if you can encourage other people to be like you, that would be fabulous.
I think perhaps the issue is, but when you're struggling with numbers. The women's game may be different in Scotland, but in the men's game, some of the teams are struggling with members. And actually, to stand up and say that we've got 9 people, we've got 10 people for the weekend, one of them hasn't paid. To actually be honest enough to say that you can't play is a bit of a struggle, and I understand that. And actually, my league question was kind of related to that, and that was last year we didn't allow the loaning of players, which I understand the reasons why it was put in. So my suggestion for the men's league this year was to allow it under certain restrictions. But if you allowed year 1 or year 2 players only to be lent between teams, it would be beneficial both for those teams playing and for those players who wouldn't necessarily get a massive run out. You know, if we could look at something like that this year and try and stop that, because I think if we can bring the team sizes up, we may have less of an issue with the membership and the rest of it.
It's a cool idea. I like that. Some sort of simple kind of borrowing player scheme, but without, ringers ruining results sort of thing. Zeno, I've just seen, why do LS collect in September? Oh, Lord's already on. But that's basically just because that's the lacrosse season year. So it's 1st September, 31st August. So,
yeah, and the other thing that we'll share with you tonight, and we will share with the wider membership, is membership fees, according to our Articles of Association, must be paid by the 30th of November. And it's written into our articles, and has been, this isn't something that came in at this AGM, it's been in there all along. And I've been a member for donkey's ages and didn't actually realise that. So that was an interesting one as well, that it has to be by 30th of November. Obviously, new people that join after then, it doesn't apply to, but renewals is 30th of November.
I just wanted to touch on 2 things. Sorry, Dylan here again. I've been living in Scotland now for, close to 10 years. And obviously, the one thing I've seen is that the fall semester for schools, you do seem to have a lot more of international students that come over, obviously, that are able to coach, that are only here for a semester. And we looked into partially like half memberships. We're taking that membership fee, literally saying, okay, September to January, this is you. And then anything thereafter would be another installment. The other thing, obviously, that I wanted to touch upon was, the big elephant in the room being, COVID. Under no circumstance are we sitting here possibly being able to go back until well after September. Are you guys looking at collecting in September and then dragging that on, or what's kind of the short-term plan for these fees that are due in September? Because there is a good possibility where you'll be charging for a product and service that you may or may not receive.
No, we're just going to make you play regardless.
Perfect.
No, literally, we're just following the government guidance the whole way. Mason is our key guy on this, and we've got another comms coming out this week, actually. We're just waiting to get it ratified by Sports Scotland. So it's a case of watch this space, and as we get more and more information, we will be able to make a decision. I can't see whether we'll definitely put information out saying we want your fees today or not. It's something we've looked at, we've put it on our risk register, and it's something we're continually assessing. So I'm afraid we can't give you a yes or no, but just watch this space.
Perfect.
Cool. All right, that's bang on 9 o'clock. I won't take up any more of your guys in, but look, thank you everyone so much for dialing in and sort of giving us a bit of feedback and a bit of dialogue. It's really appreciated, and then hopefully you find this useful, getting a bit of two-way sort of interaction with us as the board, and an opportunity to really feed in. I really hope it sort of shows that we are committed to making this quite collaborative and two-way. So thank you very much everyone, and enjoy your evening. Speak soon. Stay safe.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Cheers guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.